So we've learned really three main tools of trig. Pythagoras, which was a squared plus b squared equals c squared. You're using Pythagoras, David, to find a side, and you must have two sides in order to use it. Could be a hypotenuse and a leg, could be two legs. Just make sure you don't always assume that you're finding c squared and that you always add things together. I had a few people, how come I'm getting this wrong? Because you know the hypotenuse, you need to be going c squared minus a squared equals b squared. Primary trig ratios. SOHCAHTOA. You can use this to find a side or an angle. Right? To use this, if you want to find one side, you need an angle and a side. I'll go A, S as an abbreviation. If you want to find an angle, you need two sides. And then the last thing I haven't mentioned specifically, but I sort of alluded to it last day, and it's the angle sum of a triangle. What do all three angles of a triangle always add to? Sorry, I should clarify that. That is not true. They don't always add to 180 degrees. What do all three sides of a triangle that's on a flat surface always add to? 180 degrees. But there's something called spherical geometry where all triangles add to more than 180 degrees, and there's something called hyperbolic geometry where all triangles are less than 180 degrees. And believe it or not, those actually have uses. But for now, 180 degrees. When you're using that, you're usually using that to find the third angle. So if you know two angles, 180 minus the two angles gives you the third angle. And with that, Martin, we can now find anything. Little note, tools 1 and 2, Pythagoras and SOHCAHTOA, can only be used when you have at least one side. If you don't have any sides, you're kind of stuck because you don't know how the triangle has been scaled. You can get the angles, but that's about it. So, for each of the following, it says, find all the missing angles and sides. We're going to try and do this by only writing one or two lines and using our calculator as much as possible. First thing I would do is I would identify what I know. I know that angle right there. I have a habit of coloring in the angle that I know because now I feel better. That 15, how would I label it? Opposite, adjacent, or hypotenuse? What's the first thing they wanted me to find? Oh, angle M. How big must angle M be? How would I figure that out? I don't quite know what that means. It could mean yet that you're secretly Zorro late at night, but I don't think that's the case. Sorry, can you go louder? I can't hear. To find the angle M right here? I think I can do it in my head. How big is that angle, Katie? So what's left of the 180? 180 minus 9. These two will, if it's a right angle triangle, these two will always add to 90 as well. It's 28. I almost always do that math in my head when I'm doing the homework, but I also know that I've forgotten to carry the 1 in a dumb mistake so often. On a quiz or a test, believe it or not, I'll typically type that into my calculator just to be paranoid. Because the temptation is to go 90 minus 62 is 38, because 9 minus 6 is 3. Well, no, I got to carry a 1. Then it wants me to find MD. What would I call MD? Which trig function? Truthfully, it kind of depends. If you wanted to, you could use that angle down there because you know it now. But I have a habit of always trying to use the original data that they gave me, just in case I've made a mistake along the way. It doesn't domino into my other answers. So I'm going to use the 62. Which trig function? Oh, we did write SOHCAHTOA right there. Those of you that were away, we kind of filled this out. You can get that off somebody later, or I can bring that up later. But I did write SOHCAHTOA on my page. So which trig function? What always goes next to the trig function? 62. And that's going to be 15 over, you know what? dm. They already gave me two variables for that. You could call it x. I'm not going to freak out, but I also know I'm going to be finding more stuff and I'm going to be running out of x's, so why not use the letters that are clever? How would I get the dm by itself? Where is the dm right now? On the bottom? No, it's not. Have you spotted the pattern? What will you do to find dm? 15 divided by. Yeah, okay. 15 divided by sine 62. You get 16.988. Okay. I guess I'm going to call it, if I go to 3 sig figs, which would be right where that 9 is, 17.0. Millimeters. Now, UD, I have a bunch of options. I could go Pythagoras. I could go hypotenuse squared minus 15 squared square root. Dope. Let's try that again. This time, let's get the answer button there. Square root 7.97. 5, 6, 4, 1. I could also go trig. I could say, hey, this is adjacent, and now I'm going to use tangent. I'm going to do both just this once, just to show you that we're going to get exactly the same answer. So if I used tan of 62 equals 15 over du, and if I went, oh, okay, I'm going to divide, because I've done a bunch of these, 15 divided by tan 62, you'll notice, bang on, exactly the same. Now, I got exactly the same because I used my answer button and didn't round off with the Pythagoras stuff as well. If you've rounded off, if you use the 17.0 instead of the 16.988 something, you'll be off on a few decimal places, but still pretty close. I'm pretty good at the trig, at the sine, cosine, and tangent, so I tend to fall back on that because I really can almost do that in my sleep. And I'm lazy enough, it's less typing. I've counted the keystrokes, and I do actually think of those things. So 7.98 if I round off properly. And that triangle is solved because we now know all 3 sides and all 3 angles. Okay. B. Darwin, what do you want to find first? Oh, what does it ask us to find first? Oh, angle D? Yes? Color, 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 color. Darwin, what can I call that 12?
The opposite.
Yeah. What about that 13?
Hypotenuse.
Which trig function?
Cosine.
Say it again.
Sine.
Am I finding a side or an angle?
Angle.
How do I find an angle on my calculator?
Shift.
I am good enough that I can now go straight to my calculator and I can go second function sine of opposite over hypotenuse and not write anything down. But in our notes, let's write down that we went sine, what always goes next to the trig function, the angle D, equals 12 over 13. But if you're powering through homework, I actually never even bother writing that step down. And you'll get 67.4 degrees. Katie, how would I find angle O? How would I find angle O? Yeah, I'd go 90 minus what I just got. Now, that's the quick way to do it. If I go 90 minus answer button, and I always try and use my answer button route because I know I wrote 67.4, that's a rounded off value. I get that. I could also have used trig. I could have said, if I was looking at angle O, now this is adjacent over hypotenuse. I could go second function cosine of 12 divided by 13. And again, you'll notice I get exactly the same decimal. 22.6 no matter what. And now you can also see, Katie, I could have even used the rounded off value and I still would have got 22.6 degrees. Either of those is fine. Janelle, pick. Whatever you're quicker at or more comfortable. You know what? Whatever you're more likely not to make a silly mistake on, use that method. I'm fine with it. How can I find DG? Could go Pythagoras. In fact, I probably would go Pythagoras here. But I could also, now that I know both angles, go SOHCAHTOA trig. I would just want to, if I could, Emily, avoid using the 67.4 or the 22.6 to find it. I would much prefer to use the non-rounded off value, or I would just carry some extra sig figs. I wouldn't use 67.4. I would use 67.38014, maybe to 5 or 6 sig figs, and that'll give me enough accuracy that I'll always be good in my final answer to 3 sig figs. But I'm going to go Pythagoras. It's going to be 12 squared plus 13 squared equals mystery side squared. Am I going to add these two together squared? No, I know the hypotenuse. It's going to be 13 squared minus 12 squared equals dg squared.
I got switched over.
I know.
Good to see you again, Mr. Dueck.
So 13 squared minus 12 squared equals dg. 13 squared minus 12 squared equals dg squared. Oh, square root. I can do that in my head. So dg equals 5, or gd equals 5, and units centimeters. Those of you that just swapped in, I'll bring this up later, or I'll print up a copy and you can copy it out. We're just doing a real quick review of the basics of trig, putting it all together. Last one. Example 8. Example 2. Where'd the 8 come from? A man standing on top of a 130-meter high cliff fires a cannon down on a ship while sailing 800 meters offshore. Find the angle of depression of the cannon. I better gulp. We have a 130-meter high cliff. 800 meters offshore, I think that's going to go down there. And I'm further convinced of that because I read one of the things that they want me to find is the distance that the cannon travels, which I'm pretty sure would be that path there, although it technically would be a bit of an arc, but we'll have it go in an imaginary straight line. Angle of depression, that's that one there. What else is it? That one there. If you want to get there in one step. Okay. Angle of depression. We're finding an angle. Let's label our triangle. That 130, opposite, adjacent, or hypotenuse. That 800. Adjacent. Which trig function? David, which trig function? And I'm finding an angle. How do I find an angle? He's right over there. Yeah, what? I know you're zoning out, that's why I called you back. How do I find an angle? And is that all calculator work? I'm not going to write anything down. Second function tan, 130 divided by 800. You get an angle of 9.23 degrees. Yeah. If you wanted to write down tan theta equals 130 over 800, again, Abram, go ahead. But I'm good enough at trig that I can go straight to my calculator, and we're going to be doing a lot of trig. You'll get that good if you aren't already. Flight of the cannonball, how can I find x? What you asked me about this morning begins letter P. Pythagoras. Am I finding a hypotenuse or a leg? Oh, so it's going to be 130 squared plus 800 squared equals square root. I'm not going to write that down. You get 810? I'm fine in the homework if you do questions like that. Again, if you want to write stuff down, you can. If not, yeah. So what's the homework? We have number 1. Number 3, I skipped 2. 4 is okay. But that's really not what you're going to spend most of your time working on.